Om Namo Narayana Jai Swami Narayan Namaste. We are looking at the lecture by Swami Vivekananda, The First Step Towards Jhana. The whole gist of Jhana Yoga is to show humanity the method of undoing this karma. A caterpillar spins a little cocoon around itself out of the substance of its own body and at last finds itself imprisoned. It may cry and weep and howl there. Nobody will come to its rescue until it becomes wise and then comes out a beautiful butterfly. So with these, our bondages, we are going round and round ourselves through countless ages, and now we feel miserable and cry and lament over our bondage. But crying and weeping will be of no avail. We must set ourselves to cutting these bondages. The main cause of all bondage is ignorance. Man is not wicked by his own nature, not at all. His nature is pure, perfectly holy. Each man is divine. Each man that you see is a god by his very nature. This nature is covered by ignorance, and it is ignorance that binds us down. Ignorance is the cause of all misery. Ignorance is the cause of all wickedness. And knowledge will make the world good. Knowledge will remove misery. Knowledge will make us free. This is the idea of Jnana Yoga. Now you may ask, what knowledge? Chemistry? Physics? Astronomy? Geology? They help us a little, just a little. But the chief knowledge is that of your own nature. Know thyself. You must know what you are, what your real nature is. You must become conscious of that infinite nature within. Then your bondages will burst. Studying the external alone, man begins to feel himself to be nothing. These vast powers of nature, these tremendous changes occurring, whole communities wiped off the face of the earth in a twinkling of time, one volcanic eruption shattering to pieces whole continents. Perceiving and studying these things, man begins to feel himself weak. Therefore, it is not the study of external nature that makes man feel strong. But there is the internal nature of man, 1,000,000 times more powerful than any volcanic eruption or any law of nature, which conquers nature, triumphs over all its laws. And that alone teaches man what he is. Knowledge is power, says the proverb, does it not? It is through knowledge that power comes. Man has got to know. Here is a man of infinite power and strength. He himself is by his own nature potent and omniscient, and this he must know. And the more he becomes conscious of his own self, the more he manifests this power, and his bonds break, and at last he becomes free. Now, how to know ourselves? The question remains. There are various ways to know this self, but in Jnana Yoga it takes the help of nothing but sheer intellectual reasoning. Reason alone, intellect alone, rising to spiritual perception, shows what we are. There is no question of believing. Disbelieve everything. That is the idea of the jhani. Believe nothing and disbelieve everything. That's the first step. Dare to be a rationalist. Dare to follow reason wherever it leads you. Now we hear people saying all around us, I dare to reason. It is, however, a very difficult thing to do. I would go 200 miles to look at the face of a man who dares to reason and to actually follow reason. Nothing is easier to say, and nothing is more difficult to do. We are bound to follow superstitions all the time. Old, horrible superstitions, either national or belonging to humanity in general, or maybe just our community, or maybe just of our family. Superstitions belonging to fashion, to books, to sex, to whatever. Talk of reason. Very few people actually reason. You hear a man say, oh, I don't like to believe in anything. I don't like to grope through the darkness. I use reason. And so he reasons. But when reason smashes to pieces things that he hugs unto his breast, he says, no more. The reasoning is all right until it breaks his ideals, and then he must stop it. That man would never be a Jnani. That man will never carry his bondage all his life and his lives to come. Again and again he will come under the power of death. Such men are not made for jnana yoga. There are other methods for them, such as bhakti yoga, karma yoga, or raja yoga, but not jnana yoga. I want to prepare you by saying that this method can be followed only by the boldest. Do not think that the man who believes in no church or belongs to no sect, or the man who boasts of his unbelief is a rationalist. Not at all. In modern times, it is rather bravado to do anything like that. To be a rationalist requires more than unbelief. You must be able not only to reason, but also to follow the dictates of your reason. If reason tells you that this body is an illusion, are you ready to give it up? Reason tells you that heat and cold are mere illusions of your senses. Are you ready to brave these things? If reason tells you that nothing that the senses convey to your mind is true, are you ready to deny your sense perception? If you dare, you are a rationalist. I'm going to pause here. My mind is racing. I know so many so-called rationalists. Just recently, I had a friend on email who I've known for 20 years or more than that. And he was talking about, well, I don't believe in this, and he mentioned something. He literally was like, well, I believe in logic, essentially rationality. So then I threw something out at him. It was a very simple theological idea. It was like Theology 101. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it was simple, kind of like the idea that Christians often talk about when they're talking to people who are coming to Christ. They say, can God create something bigger than him? And then there's all these examples. Can God create a boat he can't pick up? Can God create a rock he can't pick up? And then they go on and prove, well, no, he can't, and therefore he's, the greatest being. Whatever. You've probably heard things like that. So I said something like that to my friend, and he just went, whoa, man, that's so deep. And I'm like, well, no, actually, it's the logical next step after what you just said. He hadn't thought that far. He just went, I don't believe in this, and that was it. He was exactly what Vivekananda was describing here. He basically had an idea, but hadn't actually reasoned it through. He just had unbelief. And it stopped there. There was nothing behind that unbelief. Actually, the unbelief was more just taking a stance against some other belief that he didn't like. This part also got me when I was reading this. The people who go, no more. I see that so much in political circles. People will have a political belief that they stand for or against. Doesn't matter what it is. And they'll be like, well, I do not support XYZ, and here's a reason why, here's a reason why, here's a reason why, and their reasons will be hard to dismiss. But then they'll say something else like, well, I support this. Why do you support this? Because of whatever. And that whatever will be the lamest thing you've ever heard. It will literally be so not logical, so not rational. It will just be like, how can you be so rational here and not here? And if you're a devil's advocate, like I sometimes am, and you go, well, this makes no sense. Or it actually contradicts. Maybe these two things that you hold actually contradict each other. How can you do this? Whoa, oh no, you don't. You'll get no more. I'm sure 100% of you have encountered this. I'm sure maybe this has been you. Please get beyond that stage in your life. My belief is uniformity is good. If you're going to believe in this, and you're going to believe in this, and you're going to be rational here, and you're going to be logical here, why not over here? Because this feels good? So you should stop being rational and logical, and you should have wacko ideas? Even though here you're standing strong, don't. It's a strong person that has that uniformity because they're willing to set aside feelings. They're willing to set aside things that might be good or trendy and just look at stuff. And to me, that's someone worth respecting. If you're a person who is like that, you're a very strong person. You are a very strong person, and you're not going to be necessarily opinionated. People may say you are. People may say you're a closed-minded, whatever, but no, you're being logical and rational in a way that others can't be and probably wish they were. That's the type of person I'd like to be. There's a lot of things I can't be uniform about, though. There's some ideas that I can logically tell you about and why I support. There's other ideas that, I really can't get an opinion on, and those are the ones that I just don't promote, that I don't talk about, that I step back on, that I just keep to myself until maybe someday I can. So a few years ago, I started doing this with my religion. I started logically looking at what I was doing and rationally looking at what I was doing. And I discovered I had some beliefs. For example, I was into ISKCON and Swami Prabhupada, and I went, oh, he is very Vedic in what he says and Upanishadic, and he's into the Puranas. I didn't even know what these books were, honestly. I knew Wikipedia things about him, but I hadn't read them yet. And I just knew he was very scriptural, and he was into this scripture. Whatever it was, he was into it, and it was really important to him, and it was the foundation of his belief. Okay, great. I got that. Then there was also Sri Acharya, who I talk about sometimes on this channel. And he also is very scriptural. And I watch his videos, I go, oh, this guy's really into the scripture stuff. This is really great. And my feeling was, the scripture is important. The scripture is the foundation. You can get rid of these two gurus, but you'll still have that scripture. And that scripture is timeless. So I had that. But then over here, I was like looking at spiritual stuff. Some belief system that had no scripture at all, that was based on some guy smoking pot in his bedroom and, oh, I see God, and that was it. And then afterwards, couldn't remember anything, but realized that he'd had an experience that was really profound, and so he created a religion out of it. No scripture, no nothing, no scriptural basis. If you took the teacher away, you'd have nothing. And I found myself believing things, many things like this. So on one hand, I had these teachers I respected who believed in something bigger than them. And then on the other hand, I had teachers who just were creating stuff. And everything they wrote seemed to contradict something else. Or was a new revelation, or it was just like empty. And eventually I just said, I can't do this anymore. I can't have rationality here and over here just gibberish. So I started rationally looking at all my spiritual beliefs. And I started dumping things. Just going, we're done. We're done. And my basis was, in this example, and this is legit, was scripture. I wanted things that were scripturally based. So if you are a teacher that honors the scriptures of Sanatana Dharma, that's what I wanted. Then, okay, you're good. But if you were a teacher who didn't know about the scriptures, didn't care about the scriptures, or were preaching Sanatana Dharma and the Bible, or the Quran, I'm just like, no, that's not what I want, and I would let you go. I became very rational. And what happened when I did that is I lost a lot of things that felt good, but at the end of the day, I didn't really care. And I have no regrets that I don't do tarot readings once a week now. Those just made me neurotic. But I also found that I started to discover myself. And this goes back to the beginning of this little talk. I really discovered myself and my own nature. As he said, the main cause of all bondage is ignorance. And I really found that I was ignorant of my own self. And once I started pushing away my ideas and rediscovering things, my spirituality deepened, my life changed, my views changed, and things in me started to rise up. I felt more creative, I felt more grounded, I felt happier, really, and it all kind of then started to click. And now, and this was a few years ago, And now I often will look at myself and go, okay, I'm believing something. Is this jhana yoga? Is this rational? And I'm very much into rationality. I wouldn't consider myself a jhani, but I do use a lot of it in my spirituality and in my life. And when it comes to politics, I treat the same way. Am I rational here? Am I also rational here or not? And it's hard, and it can be time consuming, and it can require stepping outside of yourself. But as Vivekananda says, this is a good thing, but also it's a rare thing. People don't want to do this. Now, I will disagree with one thing he said. He says, how to know ourselves, the question remains. There are various ways to know the self, but in jhana yoga, it takes the help of nothing but sheer intellectual reasoning. Reason alone, intellect alone, rising to spiritual perception shows what we are. Yes, I think that's true on some level. You can go a great distance using your brain, but sometimes you can use your brain and you forget bhakti, and this actually happened to me. I became really consumed by the intellectual things, and I didn't have, or I was kind of pushing off the bhakti aspect, and you can't lose your heart for your brain. I think the path of jhana yoga might send you down to some places, but I haven't read that much of folks who follow that path. I don't know. I find the path interesting, but I haven't delved into it. It seems like everybody I read would seem to have a path that is both bhakti and jhana. There seems to be this mix. Even someone like Swami Narayan, who is such a great intellect, who you read the Vachanamrut, and it's very much jhana yoga on some level, but yet it's also gushing with bhakti yoga. So I don't know if we can separate these two things. Maybe Swami Vivekananda is talking to an American audience and they don't have bhakti and they don't understand bhakti or whatever. So I disagree with him on this, but I might be wrong on that. There might be a way of having a pure jhana path, and that's it. I would be absolutely fascinated to know about that path, or to know teachers who just be like, this is the path, just to get rid of everything else, intellectualize yourself to God. And I mean that seriously. If you know of teachers like that, gurus or books or whatever, please put them down below. I would actually be really, really interested in reading them. I would love to know how that path works. That's a serious invite. But I just haven't encountered it. And I just worry about it from my own experience. That's enough rambling. Uh, and God, you've probably heard these stories I tell before. I probably repeat myself at some point, but so it goes. I just say whatever comes into my head, and these things are so vivid. So we will pick up this lecture in the next video. Actually, probably be 2 more videos, and I've got a few more lectures we're going to work through, and I hope you're enjoying this. And yeah, we'll cut it there. Thank you for hanging out with me. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Swaminarayan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.